Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in War Thunder looking at the final Festive event vehicle that was given by Gaijin if you completed, I believe, event challenges. This is the NC.900. It is a French premium plane, rank 3 battle rating 5.0. Now this thing may look very similar to some other aircraft, and well, that's because it is the same as some other aircraft. So the first one it's the same as is the Focke-Wulf 190A8 that we find in the American tree, the premium one. The only difference is that this is at rank 4, whereas the French one is at rank 3. And then if we go to the German tree, where the Focke-Wulf 190s actually originate, we find it in the form here, which is rank 4, battle rating 5.0. And the only difference is that this gets some rockets. It gets 2 of them, 110 kilo. These rockets are pretty good, especially at taking out tanks. You can definitely knock a tank out as long as you get a direct hit with them. So the NC.900 is just a Focke-Wulf 190A8. That's pretty much it. It is at rank 3 instead of the others, which are at rank 4, which is kind of a surprise. But then again, the French tree does have some very oddities, such as the P63C5 being at rank 4, even though it is at rank 3 in the American tree. I'm guessing they made this rank 3, so it wouldn't be as good at grinding the rank 5 stuff, and would only be able to be good for rank 4 and rank 2 and rank 3. That's the only reason why I can see them putting it at rank 3, so yeah. It doesn't get access to the rockets that the German one does, so this one's closer to the American one, the premium version rank 4. Now you obviously get everything unlocked straight out of the bat, since it is a gift premium vehicle, and on top of this, it means that you don't have to grind through some really annoying modifications. The Focke-Wulf 190A8 does struggle with its speed, which is one of its main good characteristics, so in order to realize that the engine and engine injection are required for optimum performance, we'll say, of the aircraft. Luckily, the NC900 gets all of this for free. Now when we talk about belts, the main belts I like using for the 13mm are the air target belts. The main reason for this is because there's a decent amount of AP and also incendiary, basically designed to set stuff on fire as you go about the place. If you want a bit more AP, then, well, you go for the APT. I would stay away from the IAI, since most vehicles now, or I think every plane in the game, or at least the majority, if they had armor in real life, they do have it now, and around battle rating 5.0, you're going to run into stuff which has quite a bit of armor on it. So therefore, IAI, it's not going to penetrate. So even though it may seem really tasty with the immediate action incendiary, I would stay clear. If you want the perfect belt and are confident with the guns, you use Stealth, API. It has AP and also incendiary, very similar to the 50 cal with its API-T. This is the one that you go for. When we talk about the 20mm, now once again, up in the air it is as well. All of these are really good in my opinion. All of these belts are great at what they do. But I stick with the air targets ones just because I like how it looks going through the air, and also you have a decent variety. HE, AP, and I. Stealth, once again, you have pretty much the same but without the tracer, so yeah, you can run both stealth and you can absolutely annihilate enemies as you go along. Armor profile of this machine, it does have quite a lot of it, not in huge amounts though. 3mm and 5 on the engine head, I suppose you'd call it, 6 on the bottom, so that these will actually help you against AA, so 8mm and 5mm. The seat itself, 12mm and 8mm, with 6 behind it respectively, and the bulletproof glass is 57mm, so head-ons are viable in this because of these facts, which is very nice. X-ray, as you can see, engine is the BMW 801 TU 14-cylinder radial. It has a lot of power behind us, but this is quite a heavy aircraft, so it does require it. At the same time, you can see the mountings of the guns with the 4 20mm, hello Bernard, and the 2 13mm. If you can hear that, that is my cat attacking my chair. It has 2 30mm in the nose, and then the 4 20mm in the wings. Yes, hello Bernard. And then it has the fuel tanks below the pilot, and that's really about it. The actual cooling systems for the engine itself are mounted in the front, so if you are going for head-ons, generally this will get hit, so you will have to go back to base pretty quickly and pretty sharply. Otherwise your engine's going to die incredibly quickly. On top of this, we were able to get the lights for the Christmas tree, or the baubles, whatever they are, and that means we get an extra camouflage, which is the non-standard bi-color camouflage. The only real difference is this white head on it, plus some changes to the bottom here. As you can see, these are all the same color as the top, but if you add on the non-standard one, it's white on the bottom. So that's the changes to the camouflage. They are quite nice. But overall, it's not that much of a big difference. I would have liked to see a nod to the NC.900 lads who actually flew this thing post-war. Now, I'm not really going to go into the history of it. If you'd like to hear about some of the history, I covered it in a recent video talking about improving camouflages for these festive event vehicles. The main takeaways from the historic point of view, basically there was a lot of spare aircraft left by the Germans around the place, and also spare tanks, which is why they use stuff like the Panthers as well, or at least they use them to build designs off of. The Focke-Wulf 190A8, there was a bunch of them left, so therefore they were used by the NC.900 in a squadron, and they renamed it the NC.900. So yeah, that's pretty much the history of the aircraft and why it's in the French tree. Anyway, let's get into some gameplay. There is a reason why you don't really see many Focke-Wulf 190A8s on the battlefield, and it's generally reserved just for the hangar. There are just better options for the Germans around the battle rating of 5.0, whether you take a BF-109, the G6, G14, G10, the K4, G2 Trop even at 4.3, the TAR-152 at 5.7, both of them, the D9 at 5.3, the ME-410B6R3 at 5.3. These are all wonderful machines that I would put before the A8. And the main reason for this is the fact that with the A8, you get a machine which is capable of getting an interceptor spawn, so you spawn about 1,000 meters off the ground above the airfield, but by the time you actually get to combat altitude around 4,000 to 4,500, everything else is higher than you. The main issue with this aircraft is getting to a competitive altitude at the same time that your team does is nigh on impossible unless your team waits about 10 minutes. On top of this, when you actually get to the battlefield, you find out that your maneuverability in the A8 is just not something that feels good. The rudder doesn't work properly, the elevator is good at anything below about 500 kilometers an hour, but over 500 kilometers an hour becomes very stiff. It has takeoff flaps, which can actually be used at really high speed, so that's really nice. But overall, you have quite an unmaneuverable machine, which struggles at high speeds. And by the time you get to the battle racing of 5.0, you've run into BF-109s, you've run into TARs, you've run into all of these things which just outclass you in every way. I suppose the only way that they don't outclass you is weaponry. 420mm, 213mm is nothing to be, dicked about on. It is one of the great loadouts that the Germans get at the lower tiers. The Focke-Wulf 190A4 always springs to mind, and the A5, when I think about machines which have so much firepower, taking them on in a head-on used to actually make me afraid, because I knew I would either always lose the battle or at least trade 1-for-1. There was no getting out of those situations. But because, after learning that these machines are not that maneuverable, you can just move around them very easy and get on them. And because of its high-speed struggles, it means that all of the planes which I talked about before are just better than it at this higher BR. Now, take that Focke-Wulf 190, put it on the Allied side, and then watch it face Germans game after game after game, because around 5.0 and 5.3, the Germans have some very popular aircraft. So what happens is, you get a version of an aircraft, which nobody flies in the German tree, because all of the other German aircraft around that BR are better, and you face said better machines. It's pretty much a recipe for disaster. And therefore, going into a battle and being able to combat these German machines is quite hard to do. You pretty much feel inferior in the machine just because it does all of the fundamentals worse than everything that you fight. Now, on top of that, at 5.0, you actually get quite a lot of allied aircraft which are also very good. So the P-47N, the P-51D, you get the Spitfire F Mark 9. You also, for the Russians, maybe slightly worse aircraft in the form of the LA-7B and the AK-9P, but still combat effective. And then you have the Italians, who get paired up with the Germans. And what do the Italians get at this BR? Well, they get a Bf-109, which does everything you do, but better, apart from the armament of course, and then the G56, which is so good, it now has a repair cost of 38,000 or 39,000 Silver Lions fully upgraded. You also get the G55S and the C205N2, which will just run circles around you. So at the end of the day, what do you have in the NC.900? You have a very heavy aircraft with an incredibly powerful engine, but still not good enough to keep this thing going at very high speeds, especially when you compare it to what it's facing, the TAR series, which was designed to replace the Focke-Wulf 190, and the Bf-109s, which can dive as well as you, and also maneuver better than you at high altitudes. Yes, they have less armament, but 3 20s or even one single 20 is enough to take out the NC.900. At the same time, on top of all of this, you may think that this machine is bulky or tanky, maybe it can eat a few rounds and still keep its maneuverability, or at least the maneuverability it has. This is just not the case. This is not a vehicle that can take a lot of damage. It just... well, what happens with this is once either a wingtip is damaged, once the center is hit, the controls are just awful on it, meaning that you have to have a playstyle where you cannot get hit. And this is with the majority of aircraft, but with the Focke-Wulfs and the NC.900, this is amplified by 10 times. If you get hit in the center, your engine will die incredibly quickly because of how the systems are located. If you get hit in the wing, you can't use your elevator anymore because it can't correct itself properly, so what will happen is you'll just go into a death spiral, and well, the rudder, if you get hit in the rudder, it's pretty much useless over about 400 kilometers an hour anyway, but it's still a pain in the ass. The only saving grace is the takeoff flaps, meaning that if somebody gets on your tail, you can make them overshoot, especially with your high roll rate, and then you can get on them. That is the only trick you have on your sleeve, and be able to hit that deflection shot that you will get. And the fact that you have a lot of guns behind you means that that deflection shot is easier, but I would still prefer to be in the position of being offensive rather than defensive in an inferior plane. The only way that I can see this being combat effective against what it fights is as a supporting aircraft. So, in certain circumstances, or the majority of circumstances, you have a setup aircraft and a supportive aircraft. So the setup aircraft would be the one where they get an enemy on their tail. Now, the setup aircraft generally is good at survivability, it can keep itself alive for long periods of time. The supportive aircraft is the jackhammer, the battering ram, the cannon, which is designed to go after that enemy aircraft which is dived on the setup aircraft. And once the setup aircraft sets it up, the supportive aircraft comes in and nails him. Now, I really enjoy playing the supportive role, whether it be with a P-47N, a P-51, any of the propeller aircraft in the game. But I struggle with the NC.900 to get the guns on targets, and that is mainly because in this supportive role, you have to be going incredibly quickly, you have one pass to make it count, and you have to hit the shots, kill the aircraft, and then go back up. Now, this is hard to do in the NC.900 because, as I said before, at higher speeds the maneuverability of the aircraft is woefully bad. So being able to get guns on target is hard to do, and if you don't get guns on target, then the setup aircraft is dead, and then the other aircraft realizes you're there now and goes after you. And because you can't climb away, because you don't have the speed, or the, well, I suppose the weight, because you're too heavy to do that, it can be annoying, let's say. Because it means two of you are dead when none of you would be dead if you were in a better aircraft. So yeah, being at battle rating 5.0, it's no surprise we don't see this aircraft coming out of the Germans. And for the French, I mean, you don't have another 5.0 aircraft, so maybe it fills a slot. But the slot that it would fill would be a ground forces slot, and the question is, do you have a combative, ground set of vehicles at 5.0? No, you don't. The 4.7 bracket is really good. The M4A4 SA50, the 75 Jumbo, and of course the AMX13 DCA40. A really good lineup, and the next one where you get a nice lineup is at 6.0, the CA Lorraine, AMX M4, and the AMX 13. And you could swap one of them out for the AMX 13 DCA40 if you want to get some of that AA power. But the question is, would I take the NC900? Because right now what I take is the F6F5N and the King Cobra. Now both these vehicles are 4.3 and 4.0, 4.0 and 4.3 respectively, and that means that they fit in the bracket of 4.7, because I don't like taking aircraft which are higher than my tanks. It puts my tanks at a disadvantage, and since they should be the primary thing that you're focusing on in ground forces, then you should focus on them. So you're already going into dodgy territory, at least in my opinion, taking an aircraft which is higher BR than the tanks that you have on the ground, and on top of this, you don't have any secondary armaments that you are able to use which could actually go after ground targets. You have armored target belts, only 20mm a pen though on the 20mm. On the 13s you have 18mm, so even though you have a ton of ammo which you could put to great use taking out lightly armored machines, is that useful in the grand scheme of things? And I would say no, since the King Cobra can easily take out 2 of any ground vehicle you see on the ground, mainly down to the fact it can carry 3 500-pounders which are dropped in sequences 2 and then 1, so that's 2 tanks which are dead. And then you also have the 37mm on top of that. The 37mm pens up to 43mm. And that's every second or first round. So that is 58 divided by 2, so that's 25, 26, 27. 27 is what, 54? So it's around about 27.5, so you're either going to get 26 or 28, or 27 or 28, something like that. Quick maths, not great. So you're going to have, let's say, a lot of 37, which you can use against tanks. The NC900, you don't. You just don't have the bombs, you don't have the rockets, you don't have the guns to deal with tanks, so therefore you have to play a fighter reconnaissance role, taking out any fighter that's near you. And since its maneuverability isn't good enough to do this, and around the bracket of 5.0 you start running into Spitfire Mark 9s, P-47s, P-51s, and for the Germans, all of the aircraft that I listed before, they all outperform you at lower speeds, or the majority, I should say, at least do. So even then, I wouldn't take the NC.900 in a ground battle. And if we go up to 6.0, I would take the AD4 and the P-63C, for the same reasons I talked about before. So this is a thoroughly mediocre aircraft, which will never really see play unless people are grinding out their rank 4 French. And I'm fine with a vehicle like that being a gift vehicle. I think it's a perfect pick, apart from the fact that we already have 2 versions of it in the game, in the form of the American one and the German one. But I still think it's a nice gift vehicle. It isn't overpowered, it is a nice rank 3 premium, and it's not going to take over games. And that's pretty much what I want out of my gift vehicle. So in that sense, it is good. In the sense of, you know, if you're looking for a premium which is going to do work for you, the only way this is going to do work is if you decide to ground pound in this, and even then, the AD2s and the AD4s are going to get to the ground targets before you. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that this will probably not see a lot of play, but it's still nice to see. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.